Hello and welcome to Dave's Delightful Dishes. As always, I'm Dave, and it's such a delight to have you here visiting me today in my kitchen. And today we're going to be making a recipe that I've gotten lots of requests for. It's homemade pita. Let's check it out. So I was coming back from the grocery store, and when I returned home the other day, I realized I had forgotten to buy pita bread. And the recipe that I was making that night definitely needed it. So I said, I wonder if I can do this myself. So I dusted off an old recipe book, pulled out a recipe, and gave it a shot. And with some minor tweaks to make it work better for me, I had some real good success. And after letting other people try it at dinner, they all wanted the recipe. So I figured, well, that is a good sign. So let's go ahead and let's try to make this pita bread ourselves. It's something that, although you can get it in the store, it's kind of nice to make things for yourself, and there's a whole lot less preservatives when you make things at home. So we're going to use these few ingredients. Okay, so the first thing we need is some sugar. And what's cool is that, assuming that you've decked your kitchen out correctly, all these raw ingredients are ones you probably have in your pantry right now, except maybe the yeast, but we'll talk about that in a second. So I need a half teaspoon of sugar. Sugar is first. And then I need 2 teaspoons of active dry yeast. You go to your grocery store, they come in packets. I make a lot of bread, so I get them in these large containers. This 2 teaspoons is about the equivalent of 1 packet. I think that's 2 1/4, so close enough. 1, 2. And then I have a cup of lukewarm water. We're going to wake up this yeast. That goes in. I'm going to give it a stir. Just get things combined and kind of get the sugar dissolving in this lukewarm water. And then I have to take a half a cup of all-purpose flour. You could use bread flour here if you have it, but all-purpose is something that people generally have on their cabinet or in their cabinets. Half a cup of that goes in. And we're going to give this a big stir. And we just want it to combine. And now that it's stirred up, I'm going to save this for later, because this rubber spatula is going to come in real handy later on. Now I need to whisk this. So I take my whisk, and this is going to come together, and it's going to be very loose right now. That's okay. We're treating this kind of like a mother. This is what's going to wake up the yeast and get things started. All right, so that has been whisked together. So now what we got to do is let this sit in a warm place for 15 minutes. And it should start kind of even bubbling a little bit, and it'll start smelling like bread. Okay, so 15 minutes have elapsed, and this is now starting to look more like a mother rather than just a loose accumulation of items. So we need to add a couple things in. I need to add 2 teaspoons of salt. I always use kosher salt, but you could use sea salt here as well. That would work fine. And I need 2 tablespoons of olive oil. Then I'm going to mix these together, and I'm going to use a spatula now. I'll mix that in, and then I'm going to start by adding another half cup of all-purpose flour. And we mix that to combine. And it's just going to be like a big, sloppy batter mess, which is great. That's just what we're looking for. So now we have to add a 1.5 cups of whole wheat flour. And I'm going to do it a 1/2 cup at a time so things blend a little more easily. And this is going to start coming together as a dough. 1 more cup. So there's a half cup. And then the final half cup. So that's a cup and a half of whole wheat flour. And now I got to mix this until the spatula stops working. And once that's done, it's going to look kind of rough and doughy like this. Once that's together as much as we can, I'm going to switch this to a silicone mat, and then we're going to start kneading it together. All right, so this is all going to get poured out here. And I'm about to get deep into the dough, so you have to ask yourself, have you washed your hands? If the answer is yes, then time to start kneading. We'll bring this together and just keep kind of turning and pressing, and trying to get as much of this remaining flour in together as you can. And there is also, when you look at the recipes, which is going to be in the description below, you'll see that there is another half cup of all-purpose flour reserved. And that's in case, depending on what the humidity is of the day. Today it's a very dry day. You may need a little extra dough, a little extra flour to make the dough come together and not be a sticky mess. Today I can see that is not going to be too much of a problem. So I'm just getting this to incorporate, and it should be slightly sticky. And as I'm kneading, it's bringing in the last of this flour, and it is starting to feel moist on my hands instead of floury now. And this is just a couple of seconds, but we're going to do about 4 minutes of kneading. So as some of you may be able to tell, I have a degree in ceramics. So that's all, the way that you knead dough is also the way you prepare clay for the wheel. But I do end up with a nice ball at the end. So this has now been kneaded for several minutes. I didn't show you the entire amount because it's not so exciting watching me knead the whole time. But there we are. And what we're going to do is we now need to get a second bowl that I have oiled the sides of. And we're going to place this dough down in here in this oiled bowl, and I'm going to put a lid on it, but not all the way sealed. I need to let it breathe just a little bit, but we want to keep the moisture in. And we're going to set this again in that warm place for an hour and let it double in size, and maybe a little bit more than an hour depending on how warm your house is. So I'll see you back once this is doubled. Okay, there's just a couple minutes left, and this dough has pretty much doubled in size. So we're going to go ahead in just a couple of minutes, and we'll get that out of the bowl and onto the silicone mat. Okay, an hour has elapsed, and it smells nice and bready in here. Now this has doubled in size, so we now need to punch it down. I'm going to knead it a little bit, just to get it ready to split up. And I've got the extra flour there if I need it, but this is pretty pliable right now and it's not sticky. And that's the way we want it. You see how it's moving with me, but it's not sticking to the board, it's not sticking to my hands. And did you wash your hands? I know I did. Okay, punch down, ready to go. So now I'm going to take this and I'm going to split it in half. And then I'm going to split those halves in half. And then I'm going to take those halves, roll them out just a little bit, split them in half as well. So that way I'm going to end up with 8 more or less equally sized dough balls. Feel free to cut them if you want to, but I find that this works pretty well. If you get one that's a little bit bigger, it's no big deal. So now I'm going to round these off. Make nice circles out of them. And now we're going to let these sit for one last time. We're going to let them just rest for 15 minutes covered with a tea towel. And in this case, I didn't need the extra flour, so I will put that back. But if you need it, sometimes it's still a little too sticky. You want to have it there and ready to go. Okay, so 15 minutes have elapsed. And these have raised up just a little bit. And they've really more, it's more that they've, the dough has relaxed. And the dog really wants to play with the ball. It is what it is. So I'm going to take this, and I'm now going to get them pretty thin. And I love playing with the rolling pin. Now, if it gets sticky, you can add more flour here as needed. But these are in pretty good condition where you notice nothing sticking to anything. And using my little gauge here, I'm getting them to about a 6-inch circle. Maybe a little bit more, like 6.5. And then just like this, we're going to head over to the stovetop. All right, so here on the stovetop, I've got a cast iron pan. I chose this one because it's about the right size, about a 6-inch diameter. And I have some, in a spritzer, I've got some olive oil. And this is on medium heat. Get some oil on it. It's just about there temperature-wise. So I'm going to take one of my doughs, and then this is going to sit here until it starts bubbling up. Now, about a minute, minute and a half, depending on the temperature. And when you flip it at about a minute to a minute and a half, there it is right there, looking nice and brown. And then it will likely continue to bubble up and make a little pocket. Now, you don't necessarily expect it, and adjust your temperature. If you're starting to get heavy smoke, then back it off a little bit. We don't want to burn the bread that much. Just a nice little browning. Not all of them are going to puff up and make a gigantic balloon. You might get a couple that do that, but as long as there's some bubbling in the dough, you know that it's working. Okay, and just like that, we have pita. Now, some of them will puff up, some of them will puff up less, some of them puff up more. But if they puff all the way, then you can cut them in half and there's a pocket. Or you can just quarter them, and I like to do that with, like, for example, some hummus. And this dill pickle hummus will be coming up on the show in a future episode. But, take that, have a little dippy-do, and you got yourself a nice little snack midday. Or perhaps you're looking for a meal, in which case, maybe a gyro. Now, this particular gyro meatloaf, which is I will link in the description below the recipe for it. It's quick. You do it in the oven. You don't need a vertical spit to make it, and it takes about an hour and a half total for full preparation and cooking, and then a little bit of cooling so that it doesn't fall apart. But that's a nice delicious meal. Throw some chips on the side or some fries, and there you go. So I think that this is certainly delightful. And I hope that you try this yourselves, although I know that they have it at the store. It's always nice to be able to make things for yourself. So by all means, let me know if you like this. Let me know in the comments below. Let me know what you'd like to see next. I'm always looking for feedback and ideas for what people want to see me make. Check out my Facebook page. You can check it out for Dave's Delightful Dishes. It will be linked in the description, as well as my Instagram. And you can see my Spreadshirt app on my Facebook page, which will have the link for my for all of my merchandise. Maybe you'd like to have an apron with my name on it. But I hope you enjoy, and I will see you all at the next recipe.